Hello and Merry Christmas! Even if you don't celebrate the holiday, I hope your December 25th is a merry one. If you like this show and you'd like to support us next year, join our Patreon. Joining gives you access to extended interviews, as well as a chance to suggest questions for future guests. In this special two-part episode, I ask my guests how they celebrate or don't celebrate the holiday. In between these clips, I'll be giving some interesting facts and clearing up some misconceptions about Christmas, starting with this one. "'Twas the night before Christmas" is not actually the name of that poem. In 1837, Clement Clark Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas, which is its original title, and where most of the common conceptions of Santa Claus come from. Oh, and there's no deer named Donner. It's Donder or Dunder. First up, Cantor Karen Kumin. Tell me, how do you celebrate Hanukkah? You specifically, even.
I do light the candles every night. It's customary to eat lots of fried foods, so we take advantage of that. In fact, it's mandated. You have to eat fried foods. I mean, we give gifts. Kind of gotten away from that. I mean, again, it was a relatively secular household, so my parents would sometimes just give us all our presents on Christmas if Hanukkah came then, and sometimes we had it on, a gift every night, but that's kind of for kids. And Hanukkah isn't really the most important holiday in the Jewish calendar. It's not the Jewish Christmas. I think it's become the Jewish Christmas because Christmas is so big in the United States. It's so commercial. So it's just a way for Jewish kids, for like me, to not feel left out.
This is a list of some of the most popular Christmas songs, and they were written by Jewish people. Now let's get infected with the enthusiasm of Reverend Jason Glombicki. So I wanted to ask you, how do you celebrate Christmas?
So here at Wicker Park Lutheran Church, Christmas, of course, is kind of one of the big holidays in the Western Christianity, along with Easter, right, and Holy Week. But Christmas is this moment. It's probably, I think, a lot of people really emphasize, and in the Christian tradition, we really emphasize the Easter tradition and resurrection, and kind of, in some ways, the importance of Christmas and the incarnation could use a little boost, a little bit more emphasis, because really Christmas is about this embodiment of God here and now. Yes, 2,000 years ago in a Jewish carpenter named Jesus, and also in you and me and here and us and community. And so there's something, and this is where I think the pandemic has been so difficult last Christmas, that we couldn't gather together incarnational in kind of bodily essence, right? And so because Christmas is all about gathering together and celebrating the ways that God works through you and me and through other people, and that we see glimpses of God in others and in humanity, that was really hard to celebrate Christmas this last year, right? And so usually Christmas would look like, gathering together here at the church. We have a couple different services. So we have one geared more towards children and one geared more towards adults with a little bit more traditional lens. They're both kind of emphasizing the same essence, which is the incarnation of us gathering together as humankind, but also recognizing that it's not just the people gathered together in that moment, but it's recognizing the humanity of all people, or the divinity within all of humanity, I should say. So the divinity within all people. Here is this little baby born to probably a teenage mother, who was in the process of moving to another kind of locality. There was a census going on, and born into a stable, maybe an overflow room, right? Just like this little kid that if we were to kind of put it in the cultural context, then we might very curtly and inappropriately and very quickly rush to judgment some welfare mom stealing from the system, this little child that's going to be a nothingness, right? And so if this nothingness can be what we then go on to revere as Christ and God's presence in the world, then we can find Christ's presence in anything and anyone. And that's the essence of Christmas that we try to hammer home, both in our children's services and in our Christmas services with adults, that this is something that's recognizing, yes, God's presence in us, yes, God's presence in places and communities, but also God's presence in all people, without exception. Immigrants of different statuses, of different sexual orientations, gender identities, places where that they've been born in the world, of different immigration statuses, of different ways that they understand God, of different religious backgrounds, that in all of those people, God is present. That's the story of Christmas that we try to hammer home as we gather together here. And sure, you'll put up a big tree and you'll remember with lights, and you'll do that with, singing Silent Night. Everybody likes that, which the little candles and Silent Night actually probably came more originally from the Easter Vigil and probably less from Christmas Eve, but nevertheless, people like to do it. So we'll do it, right? And we'll sing Silent Night. And then we'll also remember that it's kind of ironic that we're singing about a silent night, because it probably wasn't a silent night when a baby was born. And it wasn't very silent that night after Herod, at least in the story, right, comes through and kills all the babies. It's never been a completely silent night with God. But that's the beauty of it, is that even in all of the disaster and what seems like this little welfare child that's being born on that night, God's presence is there. God's presence is among us that night. And so if we can hold both of those together, Silent Night and this welfare child being born, we can hold them together and understand that it's probably somewhere in between there. And so too, we can experience God in all of our neighbors and all of our places. That's how we celebrate Christmas here at Wicker Park Lutheran Church.
The Immaculate Conception and the Virgin Birth are two separate things. The Immaculate Conception is a doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church that states that the Virgin Mary was free of the original sin of Eve. First debated by medieval theologians, it proved so controversial that it did not become a part of Catholic teaching until 1854, when Pope Pius IX gave it the status of Catholic dogma. Next up, Reverend William Weedon. How do you celebrate Christmas?
Christmas is for us such a joy. We prepare for Christmas with the season called Advent. So we have many weeks preparing for Christmas to arrive. But Christmas itself arrives for us on the evening of the 24th. And we usually have a children's service in the evening where they will almost always sort of retell the story from the Bible and reenact it, the simple story from Luke and Matthew. I mean, it's all held together there. The actual celebration for the congregation begins at midnight. Well, 11 o'clock is when the service starts. It's over sometime after midnight. The midnight mass, we celebrate that the Word has been made flesh. There's actually 3 divine services appointed for the Feast of Christmas. So there's the midnight service, then there's a dawn service, which we don't usually do. We actually did last year because of COVID. We had to divide out the congregation into smaller groups, so we were able to do it. And then there's the big celebration that is centered in on the reading from John 1. We celebrate that the Word has become flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen His glory, and it is the glory that can only belong to the only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. And so lots of, we sing carols. We sing a lot of German carols as well as English carols. I mean, well, we do sing some in German, actually, still in our church. We still sing Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht. Oh, and I should have added, we have at the beginning of the liturgy on Christmas, the reading of the Kalends. So, it situates it in the whole history of salvation, from the creation of the world all the way down to the calling of Abraham, sending him out of Ur of the Chaldees, to Abraham the king, how many years from Abraham, David the king, how many years from David, all the way to the birth of Christ. It's a beautiful statement. It's from the old Roman martyrology. It begins that liturgy. And at the end, we end with, "Oh, come, let us adore him." And then we do.
Which date does Christmas fall for you? Most churches in the Catholic sphere of influence would say December 25th, but that's not universal. Ask someone from the Armenian Apostolic Churches, Armenian Evangelical Church, or Anabaptist traditions like the Amish, and they'll say January 6th. Ask somebody from any of the Oriental or Eastern Orthodox churches, and they will say January 7th. I can already hear you ask, but what about the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem? Good question. For them, it's January 19th. For my next guest, I hope he had a great Hanukkah as well with his friends at the Tree of Life Synagogue, Father Johnathan Jensen. How do you celebrate the Christmas season?
In our tradition, we have, similar to the Catholic tradition, as well as Lutheran and even Methodist and others, a church year, which kind of marks the year. And the beginning of the year for the church is Advent, and it's the 4 weeks before Christmas. And so that time is preparation for Christmas, the first coming as well as the second coming. Right up, so you'll see decorations like lights and greenery and wreaths and so on. The music changes, and then Christmas Eve is the first formal celebration of Christmas for us. And again, non-COVID time, that would be a big service at 4 o'clock and then a big one at 11 o'clock. We do the pageant that I mentioned in another answer. And the pageant for us is a way of retelling the Christmas story. And of course, if you have kids dressed up in costumes, it's cute and people want to hear it. And those who had never set foot in the church, except for maybe a funeral, they'll come to a Christmas pageant because it's beautiful and fun. And we'll have a very full church with baby sheep, baby goats, camel, a donkey. Highlight for me, and this is, you remember the story, but you remember the odd things that happen. Camels, this is a 1-year-old male camel, is what we always get, are incredibly strong. And if they don't want to do something, they just don't. And so we're processing the camel in, which is the wise men scene. 3 wise men come in, and the camel just stopped and refused to go any further. So you had 2 guys pulling in the front, 2 at his butt, pushing him forward, and he didn't go. And so it was this little human or animal moment in the midst of that. But having a pageant is a dear and precious part of how we celebrate Christmas. At those 2 services on Christmas Eve, we have usually a 30-minute prelude of music, and our choir is 40 voices normally, and for Christmas it's 50 or 60 adults, brass, strings, and so on. We make it a glorious event, particularly in the later evening, all candlelit. And if you can imagine, or go on the website and see, it's a big, beautiful stone church that looks exactly like you think an English cathedral would, and full of lights, full of candles, and this glorious procession. And then all those carols many people would know, "O Come All You Faithful," and so on. And there are various other things that we would do, but that's the highlight of all of our Christmas season, of proclaiming that God comes as one of us in a person. We call that the incarnation, or taking flesh, and God is with us.
In 1939, the department store Montgomery Ward published a book written by Robert May. That book, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Much like the film Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Rudolph was created as an advertising campaign. Next, we have Christi, Akin, and Nabil. For the holiday season, for the December area, how do you celebrate the holiday season? Is there a Baha'i holiday? Do you actually celebrate Christmas?
You can if you want to. Many Baha'is have Christian families, and they celebrate with their families. But as Baha'is, we don't have a Christmas holiday.
A lot of other holidays.
Yes, right now we're in a Yamiha. That's specific days in our calendar where we give gifts and celebrate and have parties. Either the 20th or the 21st of March. We have Nowruz, that's our new year. But I personally enjoy all the things that go on during Christmas, but I don't celebrate it. I enjoy the music. I enjoy the food. If my relatives invite me to their home for a meal during Christmas, I go and I say, "Merry Christmas." It's not my holiday. It's just been too many years for me as a Baha'i. It's just not my holiday. So if I'm not invited to a Christian gathering, no, I don't celebrate. But I watch the music and the programs on television.
the spiritual principles that underlie Christianity, I celebrated Christmas with friends and family. This year, my wife and I went around and gave gifts to our neighbors. We just moved into a new neighborhood. We gave them gifts during this particular time, even though in our house there was no Christmas tree, there were no Christmas decorations, but we shared that with them, and they were very appreciative.
I have to interject. I love Christmas trees. I think they're beautiful. But I think we should have Christmas trees all year.
I actually enjoy all the holidays, and in this culture, I mean, you know, when I was in Egypt, we celebrated with the Muslim friends because the majority of people there are Muslim. Celebrated with them, with the Christian family, members of the family that are Christian. We celebrated with them, and you know, to me, every day can be a celebration. Every single day is a new day, is a unique day. You know, whatever comes our way, it's still a unique day, and we can celebrate it for whatever reason.
Saint Nicholas was a Greek Orthodox bishop that lived around 300 AD in what is now Turkey. He was known for his great generosity. The act that actually gave him sainthood and started the entire Santa legend came from when he tossed a bag of gold coins through a window of an impoverished man who was being forced to sell his daughters into slavery. Merry Christmas. Next up, head Pujarin Dana Rampersad. Do you celebrate Christmas, or do you have any other sort of winter holiday that you do celebrate?
So in Trinidad, we don't have winter. This year, Christmas is actually falling on the weekend. In Shakti worship, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we use those days to fast to God. So there's no meat, there's no alcohol, there's no companionship, there's nothing of the sort. So Christmas is falling during that time. We don't have any traditions for Christmas, but we do observe it like everyone else. So since it's falling on the weekend period, when we are going to be fasting, our obligations and our duty as pujaris is to ensure that the stipulations within our worship is completed. We'll be in our kovil, we'll be in our temple as an act of, I want to say as an act of humanity, because society is so segregated that it's so disturbing. We will say Merry Christmas to everyone. In this kovil, a topic that we've been pushing for some years now is service to man is service to God. So we have done Christmas treats, so to say. We had a Santa come and give out things to kids. We did drives throughout neighborhoods, visited orphanages, and brought gifts for them. So we will celebrate the social aspect of it, the traditional aspect of it, the cultural aspect of it, but there's no religious ties to it.
Christmas was first celebrated in the 4th century CE, when the Catholic Church accommodated and incorporated the pagan practices of the day. Merrymaking and exchanging gifts were a part of Saturnalia, and the date, December 25th, was celebrated as the birthday of Mithra, the sun god. This isn't modern speculation. Scholars have thought about this for about 800 years. And now, let's speak with Carl Leonhard. Do you have any I'm going to say Christmas time traditions, any winter holidays or anything that you celebrate during that era?
I try to infuse like Buddhism into all of the holidays that we have here in Sweden. For example, yesterday we have a holiday here in Sweden called Valborg, which is where we gather all of the fallen leaves and fallen sticks from the winter season and we burn it all to make a new beginning for spring. And I incorporate that into a Buddhist fire ritual, which we do with incense sometimes. And yeah, because my wife she isn't Buddhist and I don't want to force it onto my child. So we just do this kind of syncretism. I grew up in an atheist family, so we didn't have any specifically Christian things that we did. So we just like handed out gifts. We had a Christmas tree and all of that. So, well, my answer would have to be no, actually, to Christmas. I don't think that we do anything specifically Buddhist when it comes to Christmas, but we do in many other holidays.
So you were raised in an atheist family and you still celebrated Christmas?
Yeah, because of tradition.
I just want to say this directly into the camera. Atheists do celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, we do. And especially here in Sweden, where nobody is Christian or religious.
Evergreen plants have long been used as a winter decoration. It's supposed to remind people that life was still around and would return again in the spring. Egyptians used them to worship Ra, and again the Romans used them for Saturnalia. The modern Christmas tree dates to Germany in the 16th century. There are some who believe that Martin Luther was the first to light candles as a tree decoration, leading to what we now do with electric lights. There's no known tradition involving dinosaurs. And let's finish this off with Pastor David Johnson. So how do you celebrate Christmas?
Yeah, probably much in the same way as many Americans do. We put a Christmas tree up in our house. We put lights up around the house. We do Santa Claus with the kids, and we simply tell our kids that it is a fun tradition. Parents, if you have kids watching, pause the video right now. They still believe that a jolly fat man climbs down our chimney, but we don't tell them that happens. We just tell them it's a fun tradition. Santa's a fun tradition. In church side, and not that they're separated, we do Advent. There's the theme of Advent. There's hope, joy, peace, and love are the four themes. And then we have Christmas Eve service, and we have people light those candles. In our church, we'll do daily readings together, have like the daily reading and daily prayer. Because of COVID, what that looks like is everybody just reads at home and, does that. We just trust that they're participating in that. We're not gathering everybody to do that. We only gather on Sundays because of the pandemic and all that. So that's essentially how we celebrate. We believe that Christmas celebrates God becoming flesh, God taking the likeness of humanity on in the person of Jesus Christ.
I hope you enjoyed our Christmas special. I'd like to thank all of my guests for appearing on the series this year, and may the road rise with you. Evergreen France. Yeah, it's because I left out a word when I wrote it. That's why. Perhaps the biggest misconception about Christmas is that what we do during... I keep trying to combine do and during. I was very distracted by the giant snowman that walked by.